12:30 that night. At 5:30, a profile of him as a lone nut, deranged communist was in the press, and it was worldwide. Colonel Fletcher Prouty read about it in New Zealand. I'm sure if you were in Ethiopia or Germany, you read the same story. It was a wire story. Colonel Prouty confirmed to me many of these suspicions, that this was a black operation. It was run by intelligence, and Colonel Prouty has a long and distinguished record in our government, and he knew people like Allen Dulles, and he was, I think, a very strong second source to people like Jim Garrison and Jim Mars in his book Crossfire. We threw out a lot of information that was spectacular and sensational out of the movie. I think we could have created even more fireworks. We could have gone one step further. There is much evidence to pointing to the fact that Lyndon Johnson made a phone call to the chief of police of the Dallas, Will Fritz, to tell him that he had his man. We now know from Charles Crenshaw's revelations, #1 bestseller this week, he was a doctor at Parkland Hospital, that President Johnson called when Oswald was on the table, dying, and asked if the last rites could be attained, a confession could be obtained from Oswald. Many of this information was available to us, but we did not use it because of its sensationalistic nature. We tried to be responsible, and we tried to get second sources on everything we had in the movie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stone. You're to be commended because you have brought to light certain events that maybe escaped the public before, that have caused them to have the curiosity to want to know more. So I commend you.
The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Colin Peterson. No comment. Last question goes to Frank Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stone, if this material is released, and I hope it is, do you intend to make another movie?
I would hate to have to be in a position where I would have to make a film called MLK to get released the files on Martin Luther King, which, as you know, is also part of the HSCA files. The 850 boxes, I believe, contain much of the Martin Luther King material, and I think it should be similarly unsealed. There are certainly even fewer national security considerations involved, and no possible foreign policy consequences in the Martin Luther King case. I realize it might be distracting to seek to amend House Joint Resolution 454 to include the...
Let's don't include that in this one. I mean, we really... I have no problem with moving forward on that, but I really think that for us to try to do that would confuse the issue and create some real serious problems.
Although I think it would be good if some kind of oversight mechanism could be established in the legislature, that cases could be looked at in the future, such as the Martin Luther King case, the Robert Kennedy case, the Richard Nixon Watergate case, because these are all part, I think, of a overriding and similar syndrome that has afflicted American politics since World War II. And I would urge the committee to think seriously about our history and what has been told to the American people, and to try to approach the type of glasnost that we've seen in the last few years in Eastern Europe.
One other little point, kind of coincidental. It so happened that while you were filming the part that you filmed in New Orleans, my wife and I were staying at the same hotel where your star, Mr. Costner, was staying at in New Orleans at the time. Thank you very much.
Well, if I'd known that, Senator, Congressman, I would put you in the movie.
Thank God you didn't know he was there. We're indebted to you, and I can say this on behalf of the entire committee, that we appreciate your contribution to our country's attempt to become more open, not just in your artistic work, but in your very thoughtful presentation here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The second panel consists of two attorneys who served as counsel to major investigations surrounding the assassination of President Kennedy. One was on the Warren Commission, the other was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I ask Howard Willens and James Johnson to come forward. We welcome you, gentlemen. We have your prepared statements that will be included in the record. We would appreciate if you'd summarize your testimony and Mr. John